everyone, and welcome to another episode of By the Numbers, brought to you by Alphadraft. I am your host, Richard Lewis, and as you will notice, my lips aren't moving. That's because I'm in a hotel in Krefeld, Germany, where the internet is so good, even a Skype video call is beyond them. We went to the Take TV place, which is obviously going to be happening, the Acer Predator Masters, and it still isn't built. So there's loads of drilling and noise. So the option was do a show where you can't hear what I'm saying, but you can see me, or do a show where you can't see me and hear what I'm saying. And obviously that is a far more appealing option for multiple reasons. With me, as always, every week is, of course, Duncan, who isn't plagued by the same problems as me, but has been on his travels. You can't have long been back from America, mate.
No, I only got home about 7 hours ago or something. Maybe like 10 hours. Got a little bit of sleep in.
Really?
Yeah.
Fuck, you know. You are an animal, mate. You are an animal. Henry's over here, one of your crewmates. He's looking all right. He's just, he's saying hello. He's just sat in the background, just drinking a beer, trying to, wondering where his life went wrong, basically. To end up in a hotel in Krefeld with Richard Lewis drinking Warsteiner. But anyway, there's been lots going on in Counterstrike, as there always has been. The scene that never sleeps. But I think what we'll do is we'll start with CEVO, because that's where you were and I wasn't. For all MLG, right, they say they love me, mate. It's always Sundance on Twitter and Adam Apicelli. Yeah, we love Richard Lewis. They never get me to their events, mate. Never.
I don't know.
Never done an MLG event. Yeah.
Maybe they're just easing their way into the edgy people, because I know they didn't have scoots for MLG Aspen, and that's even in fucking North America. So maybe they're just gradually working their way in.
Well, first off, did they have any sort of, special rules and regulations? Did they try and put a leash on Thorin?
No, actually, that's what's strange. I mean, it is true that when I did X Games Aspen, I think I asked them at the beginning, like, I assume you're not allowed to swear and stuff like that. But even then, they weren't like, they didn't really give me any guidelines. But I probably, for the first time I did the MLG one at the beginning of the year, I probably was a little bit more buttoned up. Like, I just thought, I don't know, not sure what, like, culturally what it would be like if you put certain jokes across. But actually, I think for this one, it was pretty close to what I would do if it was like a DreamHack or something. I mean, there was no swearing or anything. Well, I mean, Scoots kept dropping him as usual. Like, he just does that anyway, mate. I said like shit about 5 minutes in, and again, I'm just looking at him like, what are you even doing? But anyway, aside from that, we still got a lot. Listen, don't worry, mate. All you need to know is I still sort of slipped in a load of like implied jokes about people being on Adderall and possible sexual orientation of players. All the good stuff still got in there somehow.
Yeah,
maybe it just had to be finagled a little bit more, Yeah, well, that's what they hired me for.
Oh, I did. Look, I saw the Twitter exchange between you and Jordan, and I got to say, I thought it was quite a good line where you said "high five" being the new nickname for Cloud9. I thought that was quite clever. If you came up with that yourself, then I think you're ready for the Tonight Show, mate. I think at this stage. But
the problem is, though, you do realise that he just completely shot me down, because he was sort of like, hey, yeah, but you are a gay. And I was like, yeah, but what about this? And he's like, did I mention your homosexuality? He was like, I was like, he's wrecking me every time. How does he do it? I just can't keep up with this. He's like, by the way, you are gay. I was like, fuck, I'm out. I surrender. Like, it's not the wit of the North American players. It's too much for me, Richard. I've played with fire. I've got burned. Now I'm stepping back from it all,
I mean, obviously, you've known Jordan many, many years. I mean, you guys are pals, right? Like, I thought
so once upon a time. Yeah.
What does that mean?
No, I think we are to some degree pals. I think there's just... You know what, Richard, I'm quite a sensitive guy to what people are feeling. I feel like there's a little bit of like underlying tension between me and the C9 guys. I don't know what for, I figure we're all killing it at our jobs, shouldn't we get along? Shouldn't we be friends? I didn't say I'd knock all of you out. That was all just jokes, guys.
Did you get a chance to sit down and talk with Freak after our last show?
Yeah, here's the thing. I had some good chats. I had some not that good chats. Some of them related to things like that. What I've realized from this experience, Richard, is some Americans, it's not that they don't get subtlety. It's that they sort of just decide sometimes that it doesn't exist. Like, even if you said something, I'm not even referring to like that specific joke I made there, but some other things that people brought up from months ago where they would say it in a way that suggested that they really thought that it was just a statement. Like, I'll give you an example. Okay, there was one team came up to me and they said something like, wow, like, can you stop hating on us or something? I was like, I don't think I've even addressed your team ever. Like, I'm not even joking, mate. Like, I think I legitimately have never done anything about your team. I can't even remember a joke I've ever even made about your team. And they were like, no, but months ago, you were like describing the NA scene and then you talked about our team and you were like, oh, I wouldn't even care if that team died in a plane crash. And I was like, I can't remember that. Here's the thing. So I was like, I can't remember that. But then when he described the whatever the context was, I actually did remember it when they said the context. Apparently, it was before MLG, which was the first game that CLG, the first LAN that CLG went to, like with that brand new lineup when they were CLG, right? And so I think when I was describing them, I said that like about CLG, as in like I was going through all the names of the teams, and when I got to them, that was like an emphatic way of sort of suggesting like I don't know who they are, I've never seen any of them playing, so I don't really give a fuck. So when I said that part about like I couldn't care less if they died in a plane crash, they actually took that as like, he wants us to die in a plane crash. Like, well, obviously not. I wouldn't even make sense, would it?
Do you not think?
I will acknowledge it might be unnecessary to say, but even so, you get my point.
Well, yeah,
I'm not even on my radar, though, mate.
I can imagine someone getting upset by that. Maybe I'm old-fashioned. I can imagine being upset by that if someone said that about me. I mean, they frequently do. But so what about what we're all interested in, Duncan? Before we get into the meat of the show, is the peace talk, Cloud9. That's what I'm interested in. Okay. you and Freakazoid, the great meeting of minds. It's like Bobby Fischer and Kasparov.
I almost felt like it was sort of a Buddhist meeting because it felt like there was just one mind there. It was just this unified. Anyway, you can see where I'm going with that one. No, here's the thing. This will not surprise you, actually. I talked to a bunch of these players when I had different downtime, etc. Actually, one of the ones that I had the most productive talks with actually was Freakazoid. He actually had a pretty... In his more sober moments, he had a pretty reasonable outlook on things. Like, his perspective was more just like... It wasn't even about just being critical. I mean, he was one of those people, unfortunately, who thinks you should never criticize players. It's like, come on, man, get real. Like, obviously you don't want that because you're getting criticized. But he did have some worthwhile points to make about the fact that if you sort of bait people in public, if they're players especially, it's one thing. Like, basically the big problem is, because a lot of the fan bases we're talking about are super douchey to me, I do bait the fan bases. I've always said I do. I do it as like a vice, like the blood off steam and fuck with those fans like that. But unfortunately, it is true that to some of the players who don't know the context of that, it seems like you're just picking on them as a team. And so they'll sort of be like, why are you sort of like trying to rouse bad feelings against us as a team? Where you're making fun of us? And so I have realized there is sort of a distinction you need to make more clearly, which I thought I was doing before, but maybe I did it too subtly, So maybe when I put Cloud9, people are thinking I purely literally mean the team. I dislike them as a team, which obviously isn't the case. So anyway, I think a lot of that is smoothed over to a degree, but I don't you're ever going to see me at like a chalet at Christmas time, Rich, pouring eggnog or whatever the fuck they drink in America into Freakazoid's cup and having another meet of the mind.
Joke's on you, mate. That was his last urine test. But anyway, I'm glad you sort of started to make reparations because they're good guys. They're good guys over at Cloud9, and you're a good guy. And I just like it when good guys get along with other good guys. That's what I'm all about. That's kind of my mantra in a lot of ways. So yeah, I think we're all pleased about that. That's the thing.
There's still going to be times, though. Let's be real, where someone who thinks they're really good plays like absolute shit, and then you have to say they played like absolute shit. So that's why I say it's not like it's universally going to be fixed. But what I acknowledge is there are outlier cases, like some of the ones I've referenced, where it probably is a bit unnecessary, and you could if you just even took that down a little notch, things would just run a lot more smooth.
Well, here's where we get to put your newfound wisdom to the test, because we'll talk about the CEVO Season 7 finals. Obviously, you were there. Henry was there. Again, that's how far down the fucking pecking order I am. They're even flying this fucking washed up sauce fucking dickhead out over me. It's fucking unreal.
They don't even know what sauce is, mate.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? Exactly.
This is one qualification.
Oh, yeah, Henry. Yeah. That man who's just a neck that runs into a pair of legs. Yeah, we'll get him out. The fucking human ostrich. Let's fly him out, yeah. But me, yeah, fuck Richard Lewis, like Premier Esports journalist attempt. Yeah, what's he got to say? We'll definitely pay for Henry. Yeah, it's unreal. Anyway, by the way, Henry, can you open a beer for me? No, yeah, nice one. So yeah, you guys were out there. It looked a really good event. I was pleasantly surprised by the production value, especially when we've had a recent run of not so hot CSGO events up until DreamHack and Face It combined, which I think we all agree was a good event. But we have had a few disappointing ones. Thought the production value was good, and there were some interesting games, but not so much for the North American scene again, who really struggled in their respective groups. So I guess rather than go over sort of each team's progress, we can just talk about the sort of also rans, which are basically a combination of Liquid, who finished bottom of their group behind CLG, Cloud9 and mousesports, and Tempo, Storm and Luminosity, who, I mean, I don't think they had any chance ultimately of getting out of the group with Na'Vi and Virtus.Pro. But perhaps the surprise there is that Tempo Storm finished above Luminosity. So just some thoughts about these American teams on their home soil. Were there any observations you made?
Yeah, the big problem is, I mean, you have to remember the first event that MLG was involved with for CS, the one at the beginning of the year, was where we famously had a whole bunch of best-of-1 upsets. That was where the CLG team beat LDLC, who won the event eventually. Who else was there? There was Keed Stars had beaten Cloud9. Cloud9 beat Nukes, Nip on Nuke. So there was all these crazy one-off sets. You were hoping maybe something like that could happen this time. It was obviously way less likely because you have to remember this was a best-of-3 double elim format in the group. So it was going to be hard to take a series. And yeah, when we look at it now, like those three teams you've mentioned were never going, they never had any chance to get out of the group. The only team that had a chance out of the teams that didn't get out was CLG. And that's just because it seemed like bizarrely Cloud9 kind of fell apart in some of the maps they had against them. And so there was a chance to maybe beat Cloud9 there. But I mean, on one level, there's Liquid. I'll just start with them. Yeah. Liquid has just got massive problems. Like, I mean, they just did nothing at this tournament. They won a map off CLG, but otherwise got wrecked on a map as well. And you have to remember, CLG wasn't playing with their in-game leader. They just brought, who even was it who was the stand-in? Oh, they brought Sanks from Helios.
Yeah, Sanks.
Hiko's team. And then they just made Cutler their in-game leader. So they changed everything up. It's not even like they just had a stand-in for the fifth player. The fucking in-game leader was a stand-in. They still convincingly beat Liquid. And actually, like I said, we're taking Cloud9 close. So they were the best of the North Americans that didn't make it out. Liquid was really underwhelming. I don't know what the point of that team is aside from collecting a sick check from Liquid every month. Like I don't know where the future is for that team. And
well,
then the other group,
it's interesting. Team Liquid have made all this forward progress in League of Legends. They finished number 1. In the split, they've always had a great pedigree in StarCraft. Like, I know they really like these guys in the CS team and they really support them. They have a great relationship. I mean, it's a massive cliche that people use in esports. We're all one big happy family, man. Like, everybody says that. Like, basically what that means is we will backstab each other to death for an extra €50 a month. That's what that means. If you ever hear the phrase, we're just a big family, it's bullshit. But what I will say is with Liquid, who've never really publicly made that statement, they are more like a family in the sense that you have to have a certain persona, a certain personality type to even get into Team Liquid to begin with. They're never going to pick up a fucking firebrand, controversial player. They like to go for kind of potential players who they know with the right support can maybe get places. They're very obviously dedicated to the NA scene specifically, rather than just bringing in high-profile foreigners. That's how they operate. And I know they really like the team they've got in terms of personalities. But let's just be fucking real. Flowsick, I do not know how he is on what should be one of the top teams in America. His form lately has been atrocious. And just when it looked like Adrian was going to
let's just make a brilliant cup of tea and be really awesome at back rubs. I mean, what else could it be at this point in time?
Exactly right.
Maybe he just agrees to go to, I've got it, Rich. He agrees to go to events with just a carry-on bag and someone else gets to check their bag into his allowance on the flight. Is that the reason why?
Yeah, he's the discount guy. But, I don't know. And it's like I'm saying, just as Adrian was sort of coming into what I thought might be some form,
he had a really poor tournament again. And, at this level, you can't afford for your AWP to be bottom fragging at all. Like, it's too vitally important, especially when they don't have, someone who's a naturally accomplished entry fragger, and they've got real deficiencies, not just in terms of communication, but literally hitting their shots. I mean, across the board, they're getting out-aimed. Now, I think you could take Nitro, who, let's not forget, he was meant to be the breakout NA player, he was being really talked up quite a lot. And you could take Nitro and Elige, who I think are good players, and you could probably add a few players around them and make a very good NA team. But ultimately, I just don't see how Liquid are going to turn the corner for me.
No, and the big problem is, it's one thing when they go to Europe and they're finishing in last place or second or last place. This is against North American teams, though. Like I say, you're playing a team that you're already supposed to be as good as CLG, and now they don't have their in-game leader. That should be a definite win for you. You should be the one competing with Cloud9 to get out of the group. So abject failure at this event for Team Liquid. Then in the other group, the biggest problem here is Tempo Storm were the ones invited last minute, where they've even had roster moves recently. So Luminosity are the team that, listen, apparently they had decent backing, etc. They just got Devil Walk. They're the ones that are supposed to have the chance. Now, in reality, I never thought they had a chance because they were in a group with VP and Na'Vi. So I never thought they had a real chance. But in the end, Luminosity was able to do pretty much nothing. They got really hammered. I think all they did was win one map off Tempo Storm in overtime, and that's it. Yeah. That's for the whole tournament. Now, Tempo Storm, again, they were never going to get out the group, but at least they did something in terms of these other North American teams, which is they won a map off Na'Vi on Inferno in overtime. Now, that's not you're not going to get a medal for that, but that's impressive. They did win the one map, and they also were close on the first one. With that said, though, Na'Vi looked pretty bad in that series, and it's I give them credit on one hand, but that's not one of those results where it's you went up to Navi's level and you were playing at some world-class level. Navi had their problems at times in this event, so I'll give them some credit. Hey, they were the best of the North Americans who didn't make it out, but it wasn't some world-beater performance. And also, I doubt they'd follow up on it, So it's hard to go too far. Just
focusing on Luminosity for a bit, because obviously I've been talking about this roster for a while. On paper, it's a roster that makes sense to me. I really rate PTR. Right, or Peter, if you want to call him that. Pyth, their Swedish import. I think he, again, that word potential. I think he's a decent player. Anger, I know, going right back to the Source days, I've always thought Todd can be a good fragger when it's required from him, and he's an experienced player. Always liked him a lot. Now they're really struggling. They're really faltering at the moment. And since the introduction of Devil Walk to the lineup, which I think a lot of people were like, ooh, this is a bit of a coup. Getting a guy who's won a major, getting another European, getting all that experience. The guy who was the brains, but that's how some people saw it. The brains behind Fnatic's success, the coach. This could be really good for Luminosity. But actually, and I hate to do this because I know Jonathan, we hang out at events all the time. But again, just because we're not biased, despite what people think, since he's come back to playing, he's been really poor. Really, really poor. And to put it into context, this is a guy who, as I said, has won a major, was performing against top teams not that long ago. This event, he went up against Na'Vi, and in a 2-map series, he got 16 kills. It's just not good enough for me. So I just wanted to get some thoughts about Luminosity, because why is this lineup failing? On paper, it looks really good.
Yeah, I think that's the problem, though, is that, first of all, the big issue is when you look at all the different members of the team, if I'm actually thinking about it now, because I've been thinking about the problems they've had, nearly every single name, as you look at them, you're thinking oh, that guy was good. And then you insert 6 months ago, 9 months ago, 1 year ago. It's never that guy's really good right now at this exact thing, and so I can see how he'll fit. So really, it is a potential team, It's if everyone played to the potential of where they were at their career peak, or where they were 6 months ago, or where they could be if they had the right teammate. There's so many contingent factors that it probably would be a miracle if they were as good as the paper lineup seems. With that said, I mean, Devil Walk was always like he was one of the most pure support players. Like he never was the person who was all about the kills. He was just trying to facilitate other stuff. So it is true he hasn't been good. Then again, he hasn't been playing again pro for a long while. Like it's
true.
He's had quite a stretch off. So I can give him some time to work into it in that sense. The problem is when you're going to have that sort of player, it's like whenever I talk about having a player who's a really brilliant in-game leader, but they're not very good at fragging, it means that the stars that you have to be even better in that regard. So I think that's another problem they have here is that the people you're looking at as the potential to be stars, like Anchor, Pitt, apparently is how you're supposed to say the name, I was told.
Really?
These guys haven't really been delivering either, So, I mean, I think it's just a mess of a lineup, I don't know what you do with it at this point in time. And then obviously you've just got this recent news that they've sort of been cut by their organization and they're all got in Keyed Stars, which I can't really blame the org for because Keyed Stars, I know what you're going to get from them. They have results and maybe there's even probably helps them going into the major. So, yeah, unfortunately for this lineup, I'm not even sure what the solution is because they've been so bad for so long. It's like, I don't see why they're going to turn the corner.
I was going to come to that in the news section, but I guess while we're here, I mean, I kind of concur with your assessment that from a business perspective, from a results perspective, bringing in the Brazilians is actually a smart move. They're hugely popular in an emerging region that's going to, they've got incredibly loyal fans. They deliver. They were the second team in NA, in the ESL, ESEA Pro series. So they're going to carry that forward potentially. And they look good, wins over TSM, for example, recently, clearly capable of anti-stratting and doing well against European teams. But I can't help but feel that what happened to Luminosity was cutthroat as fuck. Like it really felt like, right, when you're down and things aren't going well, you would expect the org to maybe be the ones that take the pressure off. The Luminosity organization just basically kicked the fuck out of them. Like, yeah. What's that? Feeling miserable for losing, are you? Well, guess what? We're getting the Brazilians in. See you shit noobs. Bye. Unbelievable. Like, that's how it felt to me. Like, I don't know if you thought that was too much, but.
Yeah, but at what point is it enough? I mean, you have to realize this is a team that's just failed repeatedly. Like, what's this, like 3 LANs in a row? They've just bombed out in like last place pretty much. I mean, there's some stat that someone has where they're like, I can't remember what this is based on, but everyone before this event was saying there was some stat that they're like 0-13 on LAN or something ludicrous. So there's obviously some massive problems going on there. And I mean, it's true. If you have a contract for a 1 year or whatever, yeah, you should probably wait out the contract if you're the org. But yeah, I mean, yeah, how long are you supposed to wait? It's not working, is it? You're at the end of the day, you're not getting back from the players what they would have told you they're going to give you. I mean, they've been given everything. Put it this way, this is one of those scenarios where, I mean, I don't blame them in this sense, but you have to remember, this was the same team that had that Navfly guy who was playing pretty well, and then they just kicked him the fuck out to get Devil Walk. So it's not like they themselves are like, all friends, yeah? We all agree we're going to stick together for a year. Like, they do it themselves, so it makes sense to me. I don't know whether it's true as well, but Luminosity did say, they sort of hinted at the fact that if you were allowed to have 2 teams, they'd probably just try to have both. Now, that would obviously be convenient if they knew it wasn't true and you're just saying that to kind of placate the community. But I don't think it's implausible because it sounds like from what I'd heard talking to the players, it sounds like they did have a good relationship with the org. So I think it's just an unfortunate. Basically, I think that's a scenario where it's probably true. I think that org would have stood by them down through almost anything, but you can't stand by them by like abject failure like this. Eventually, even the person who's your friend's going to have to be like, this is business at this point,
And that just leaves Tempo Storm, obviously the new home for Shazam, who, on an individual basis, although the team didn't really, they weren't able to get a great upset, although you can argue beating Luminosity, maybe that's an upset. Certainly, I think Luminosity themselves would have been expecting to beat Tempo Storm. But I thought Shazam played really well, actually. Well, not really well, but better than how he looked in Cloud9. He, perhaps the pressure's off a little bit and the level of scrutiny is a bit reduced, and he could be a bit more kind of, play with that kind of individual style that he used to have. So did Tempo Storm stand out for you at all?
I mean, like I say, out of Liquid, Luminosity, And Templestowe was the best. They played the best level. It's not that when you looked at their players, you were like, wow, this guy's a standout. This guy's doing super well. Shazam did play well. I mean, what he essentially did at this LAN was get rid of some of the kind of stigma that he was like a terrible player when he's in Cloud9, because he did have a lot of problems there. He got rid of some of that. He played closer to the form he used to have in Denial when they picked him up. I don't know if he's ever going to be that good again, but he certainly had a fine LAN. The problem is a lot of his teammates, understandably, aren't going to be top players. I don't think some of them were all right, but the only one in that team that I particularly rate is the guy Roka. Aside from that, I'm not really that impressed.
What about Automatic? I thought he did, quite well.
Yeah, but I think the reason he got cut from Nihilum is he wasn't very good.
Well, but I mean, while we're talking about fucking cutthroat, disgusting teams, I mean, Nihilum was fucking next level. That was like some Wild West shit. That was. So, but we can talk about that a little bit more. So let's move back through the CEVO sort of tournament. We'll kind of go in order of placings.
Okay.
So obviously Cloud9, they've had this brilliant run, okay, where they've been all conquering heroes in a lot of ways in Europe. Although not quite all conquering, almost all conquering. Made it to 3 consecutive finals. Played really well, got a very decent win over Fnatic, and runners-up at 3 big events, and nothing to be sniffed at. Definitely made me look at the team in a different light. And, when CEVO was coming around, I looked at the list of teams from Europe that were going, and, Cloud9 have beat Na'Vi, they've beat Virtus.Pro, I think they beat mousesports as well in recent events. Was it Gfinity? Did they play them?
No, they didn't play them there.
Right, okay. Okay, so, but, they were capable of basically beating anybody that was in attendance. So I was thinking maybe this is where Cloud9 sort of, finally get that win. And, this is a very good couple of months for them. Now, for some reason, they just weren't really the same team. And they came unstuck against Virtus.Pro in a good series, actually. They did take them out. But I just wanted your thoughts, and I know you love to talk about Cloud9, especially now that we're all friends. So I just wanted your thoughts on Cloud9, first of all. What was it that was really holding them back at this event that stopped them making another final, perhaps even taking the title here?
This was a really bad event for them. Like, bearing in mind they were good, like in odd spots, like 1 or 2 maps. This was nothing like those 3 tournaments where they went to the finals, especially because the last one, the one where they'd even beaten Fnatic in a best of 3, and they topped the group, and that one actually looked to be the best of them all. And so coming into this one, you'd expect much weaker field. Okay, Na'Vi's the team you played reasonably close in the SWC final. VP's supposed to be on a slump. You're supposed to have a shot to win this tournament. You should literally be battling for the title. You don't even make the final. The big problem was there was a bunch of massive weaknesses they had here. Like the first series they played against CLG, they almost lost this game on cash, where they won the first half 13-2, and then literally CLG was at map point on the last round of the game in regulation. That's how badly it went. Sorry, I'm just going to silence this shit for a second. Okay, anyway. So that immediately was
for a minute, I thought I heard a woman shouting. I thought, has Duncan got company?
So the problem is that's like one of their home maps, and right off the bat, they're essentially getting wrecked when they're on CT side by the T side of a team that don't even have their in-game leader. So that's a really bad sign when you can't defend one of your home maps like that. The great teams, you just know they're going to win the home maps, and then it's the others. That's like a default. Then you had the series against Mouse, and that was really embarrassing. This series right here against mousesports was basically all those props we've given Sean Gares for the great runs at the other tournaments, like outthinking teams like Fnatic, knowing where they'll be, constantly mind gaming the envious guys and just knowing their tendencies. Just a great streak of form in terms of knowing how to match his team up against the top team. And I've made this point on past episodes, that I think, you can look at the fragging of the great players they have in their team, but a lot of what made them kind of close the gap between the best teams in the world was Sean Gares being able to like bridge some of that by giving them like sort of almost the cheat codes to be able to play these teams. This tournament, he had massive problems, and this Mouse series was like the biggest indictment of it because, again, the 2 maps they played was Cash and Dust 2, Cloud9's home maps. First map, they got absolutely wrecked on Cash, and the problem was they started T-sides. That's supposed to be where they're really good. That's where you can pencil in for like 7 to 9 rounds, then they'll have a chance. No, they just got schooled completely. In this match, if anything, it was God B who was just out reading Sean Gers all the time and just had the answer for him. And then the second map was Dust 2. And on Dust 2, it was like the other way around. This time it was when they were on CT, and it was Mouse just picking them apart on Terrace side. So I have to give credit to obviously God B. He obviously showed very, very impressive form this tournament in terms of his reading ability, but it really put a lot of kind of the blame on the Sean Gers, I thought, for that series. Then you go forwards. Okay, they got past CLG, no problem again there when they did the rematch. But the semi-final against Virtus.Pro was really unconvincing because they started on Train, which again is supposed to be a map that you're starting to think is more of a Cloud9 map. Like they've had good results. They've just beaten Fnatic on it in the semi-final at Face It. They got absolutely rolled on this so hard. I think it was something like 13-2 on the CT side of VP. And someone said, I don't know if this is accurate, but it sounded like it, that actually it was because VP picked Train that it was Cloud9's choice which side to start on. And they chose to start on Terrace side. So obviously that tells you a few things. First of all, they had a sense that they were going to play this map. They left it in the map pool purposely. They came in knowing, oh, we'll start on T side. We've got something planned. And obviously it didn't happen at all. So again, listen, yeah, there's not fragging from some of the players, but we've got to start at the head, with this. We've got to start with Sean Gers and go, something's going wrong at this tournament for him. Now, maybe it's a one-off. I don't know. The second map was Cash. This one they did wreck, actually. VP wasn't in it at all. They did well. You thought, okay, maybe they fixed it. The third map, though, was basically the same story again. It was such a massive lead from Virtus.Pro in the first half that even with like a comeback, it was always the case that VP was going to get there. And VP also was in very good form. But I have to say, for the event as a whole, I got to start with Sean Gers. I think he had huge problems. He essentially had none of the impact that he's had at these great last tournaments. And then in terms of actual individual players, I thought the one player who really struggled was actually Shroud. Shroud just did not deliver the kind of like big fragging, big single map performances that we're used to from him. That wasn't there. And so when you take those two factors out of the equation, suddenly they're not going to beat VP. They're not going to beat Na'Vi, and amazingly, they didn't even beat Mouse. So I think across the board, there's not a lot of positives from this event. And if you're Cloud9, you have to hope that you just go to the major next and it's all forgotten, and that turns out to be the blip. But this is why people who are massive fans of Cloud9 and players in Cloud9, you can't get too hyped to yourself. You can't believe your own press when you have a few good tournaments. Because, yeah, you had 3 good tournaments. What did you think you were going to have? 7 good tournaments in a row? Let me be realistic here. Even good teams like VP had a big, massive failure at the last tournament, Top teams, this is going to happen to you. So, understand that your best day, you can beat a lot of these teams. You can be very good, but there's going to be these bad days as well. At the moment, they have to hope this was just a bad day and not kind of like leveling off, I don't think it is leveling off yet, but there's a warning sign there, I think.
Well, outside of performances, could you put your finger on anything specific? I mean, you were there at the event, I wasn't. And, I always talk about it. I don't give away all of the dirty secrets in the industry. I'm happy to talk about shots in the makeup lady or whatever. That's fine. That's fair game, right? But, I'm never going to talk about what players were doing, the night before or things that were said and all that. You've got to keep confidences. But, I mean, you were there. You were observing how they were. Were there any factors that maybe stood out to you where you thought, hang on a minute, there's something not right with the team? Like maybe were they under any more pressure? Was there an increased media scrutiny there? Did they look like perhaps uninterested to be at the event? Did they look tired? Were a little bit burnt out? Because they've had a run of events that few teams would engage in.
Yeah, but there also have been some very good teams who have done a similar sort of run, like Fnatic, Na'Vi. There have been teams who've done similar runs, and it hasn't gone necessarily as bad as this at times. The thing is, the event was pretty well run in terms of like times when people got in and stuff. So I don't think like it was travel or anything that wrecked them. I will say, just as an aside, like, listen, personally, I'm not someone who buys into the idea that, like, if you've got things going on outside, that automatically has to wreck your in-game. Like, I think the best competitors, some of them can even thrive in that, because they just shut off and they go, right, the game's my refuge. This is where I can feel at home, But I have to say, it doesn't really help things if Cloud9's, like, getting salty at me over stuff or having beef with me and stuff. Like, you're trying to play a tournament, mate. Like, Do that in the time between tournaments. I would, if like, just as something to pick up on. If I were them, I wouldn't be wasting my time on stuff like that. You know, do that in your off time. Don't do it while you're at the tournament, because what's the point? You know, your aim is to win this fucking tournament, and you haven't won a tournament yet with this lineup, remember? So that's the one sort of circumstantial thing I can think of. But otherwise, if you're just thinking about in-game stuff, like I said, the Sean Gares, Shroud, and then beyond that, I think the biggest thing was actually map pool, because like I said, one of the amazing things about Cloud9 was that they weren't just like, oh, if you get them on Dust 2 and Cash, they'll be super sick, which they had been. But it was that they were adding like all these other maps. They were having like Cobblestone was coming in, Train was coming in. They were starting to expand to like a 4 or 5 map pool. Well, a lot of that disappeared now. Like a lot of that was just like, oh, those were just maybe one-offs, or maybe those were like they're good on it versus NA teams, and they scouted this one European team. They had everything prepped. Maybe some of this is even the fact that these European teams, like if I'm God B and I'm in that group, I'm definitely going to have watched Cloud9 demos, and I love to play Cash and Dust 2 anyway. So now I've got all those demos from 3 events. Now Cloud9's getting some of their own medicine in that sense, you know, because, hey, mousesports has played one LAN, so what do you know? Fair's, you know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander in that particular sense. That's going to happen to you as well once you're a top team with that target on your back. So I think it's a mixture of factors like that. The problem is I don't think we'll really be able to nail it until we see how like the next 2 LANs go, you know.
Well, let's talk about mousesports at this juncture, because you've already alluded to one of the points I wanted to bring up was, is there now an argument to say that God B has really shown that, you know, he was always respected as one of the great leaders in 1.6. If you talk to any of the 1.6 pros, they'll be like, yeah, you know, God B's team, they were always a nightmare to play. Tactically, you know, they weren't always the best. You could beat them, but it was always hard. It was always super hard. You had to be at your best, because you know, God B was one of the game's great thinkers. When he came over to CSGO, I was there when he made his debut with the mousesports lineup. I wasn't convinced by his play at all, and I didn't know if he would ever get there, because he was really struggling with like fundamentals. Like he didn't understand how Molotovs work, for example, and things like this. You know, the mechanics of the game were alien to him, and that was very much apparent in how he played. So I thought this is just going to be one of those things mousesports are doing because he's a big name, you know, got previous with the org. It's, you know, kind of like a reverential thing, but eventually mousesports will realize that he's never going to be able to replicate what a great in-game leader he was in 1.6. And when they realize that, they'll change the roster. They'll bring in more players. Actually, what's happened is every time I watch mousesports, it's a tactical masterclass, which is propped up by obviously the fact that Chris J was in great form at this event. Got to be said, and of course Nex probably on his current form one of the best riflers in the world, like easily, you know, top 8. Just to put a very low number in there, just so people don't lose their shit. But he's obviously higher than number 8 right now on current form. So the question I was going to ask was just about this mousesports team, and in particular God B's contribution. Do we now need to think of him as one of the game's great in-game leaders? He's up there with a Carrigan, for example, at the moment.
Yeah, I think he's definitely getting into that territory, because the key thing is you look at mousesports and actually there's not a whole lot there. Like this isn't close to an all-star roster. This isn't a team with like players that are so sick and they've been done a whole lot in other teams. Like it's true, you start with Nex and he's really good, and then Chris J's had like some stellar maps at this tournament. After that, you're starting to thin out really quickly, especially when you then add in that God B himself falls into this mold of the existence, the Sean Gares of the world, that they're so good at in-game leading, but the minor downside that comes with that is they're really quite bad individually. Like God B is not good individually. Every time I watch him, he's quite poor. But come on, man, it can't be a coincidence you can take that lineup of players. Much as Sean Gares has taken Cloud9, Existence takes a team with like 3 or 4 support players at times, and they're able to actually legitimately contend with top level teams in series. It has to be, and especially this Cloud9 series. That to me was like, that wasn't even about Nex or Dennis, or I mean, some of even the lesser players had really good maps. That was just like one guy completely shutting the other guy down mentally and just knowing everywhere he was going to go. Like, I'm not going to, well, I don't make it ridiculous that he knew everything, but he had a really good sense of like how to play against him, how to adapt. And it's like the other guy can't breathe almost, because every time he tries to make an adaptation, the other guy's there and he's shutting it off really early on. And that's the most frustrating kind of person to play against, you know, where they're just mentally on top of you. And so I think you have to give a lot of the props to God B for that, because come on, who else can it be?
Yeah, I definitely agree. on that point. But I mean, what was really the standout for me, like about mousesports this event, was I do think Chris J was the difference maker. He's been inconsistent, even when he's been at his best. But at this event, he was really consistent and really, really good. I think it says everything that when he went up against Cloud9, he was the superior AWPer to Scoodle just temporarily in that match. I'm not going to go ham and say overall, obviously, but in that matchup, he was the AWPer that was getting stuff done. He was just on a different planet to almost everybody else on the server, with the exception of Nex, who wasn't that far behind in terms of his fragging contribution. So if Chris J can keep that form up, because we've made jokes about it in the past, right? We call him Online J, and we accept that. We never. Well, I don't. I've never wanted that to be an inference that he was cheating. But the reality was he would play far superior online than he would in a LAN setting, and in LAN he was inconsistent. If he can find that level of consistency and do that kind of damage to top tier teams like Cloud9, this mousesports need to be taken seriously. I don't know where did you put them in your last top 10?
I don't think they're in the top 10 anymore. I think they just dropped out. They were 10th in like 2 ago, and I think they dropped out from what I remember because they'd only had the one event. Obviously, this is going to help. This probably does get them back in again. The thing is, that is roughly where they are right now. If anything, they are sort of like a 9th, 10th sort of team because it's like, okay, they beat Cloud9. That's a very legit best of 3. They had the ones against Virtus.Pro at Gfinity. But in general, I think this is a team where, because it's like the in-game aspect and they've got some star aspects, but not a whole lot. I think I'd more expect them to just be the team that can always compete with the other teams. To me, they're like a Dignitas. They probably won't win over the top 5 or 6 team, but they'll always compete and they'll have a map that they'll win, or they'll come really close on one and you'll be like, oh, I can see whether the gap's closing there. I think it's more like they're very solid in that sense. I don't know that they're going to burst out and suddenly have runs to big finals.
Yeah. So let's get to Na'Vi. Na'Vi have been in a bit of a weird place at the moment. They finally sort of break the hoodoo. They win that ESWC event, and that for me was kind of like proof of what I've been saying for a while, that this is a team that is improving, that is moving forward, that is a top tier team that needs to be respected, that has some of the best players in the world in that lineup for what they do. And they go to CEVO, for me, as favourites to win. I was kind of anticipating a Cloud9 Na'Vi final. A rematch of ESWC was what I'd anticipated in my mind. Now, I thought they looked really, really good in the series against mousesports, and I thought they looked really good overall, apart from that sort of anomaly where they lost the map to Tempo Storm, which was almost like a precursor of problems they were going to have in the final. But I couldn't believe, actually, that they lost to Virtus.Pro. So I do want to sort of pick your brains about what your observations were with this team and what you thought about them, because, Guardian looked to be in good form. Flamey was, he bounced back from that fairly poor performance he had at the last outing in Valencia, where he was rock bottom. Even Edward and Zeus ahead of him in terms of fragging ability. Not good for the guy that is meant to be the fragger on the team. But everything seemed to be going well. Seized was consistent, not up to the standard he was in Valencia, but that everything was there for them to basically be able to win this tournament on cruise control, and then they just seemed to fall at the last hurdle. So what prompted that?
I thought this would be an event in terms of the previous ones where they should just blitz it. Like, they should just come in super hot form and wreck everyone. But actually, almost throughout the tournament, they managed to find ways where it just became really hard for them. Like, the Tempo Storm match, listen, I don't put too much stock in that. Like, it's true, some of their players played quite poorly in that one. I think that was the one where Guardian and Flamey actually were fairly bad over the series. But it's like they were nearly always going to win that series. So I think they were just cruising on that one. Like, not they didn't give a fuck, but they just kind of, it felt inevitable they were going to get there somehow. And so that one I don't put too much stock, even though it's not great to be coming close against a low-level team like that. The one that was really shocking was right away in the winners bracket, where they played VP in the winner match, and the maps were Overpass and Train. Now, if you'd have asked me to put a bet down, I'd have given you crazy odds that Na'Vi would win this series. Like, you'd have to bet me a lot of money for this to be worthwhile in terms of taking the other side. Like, you have to give me sick odds on VP, because Overpass and Train are supposed to be two of Na'Vi's best maps. Like, actually, before this tournament, I actually might even have said on Overpass, I think they might be the best team in the world. They got beaten on Overpass and overtime by VP. One of the things that VP actually taught us in this tournament was that they are amazing on Overpass. I always knew they were good, but they beat Na'Vi twice on it in impressive fashion. And then on Train, VP, just like they wrecked Cloud9, they just schooled Na'Vi on Train. And so that immediately was like, wow. But at the same time, because of the order of how it happened in the tournament, you didn't think to yourself like, oh man, Na'Vi's playing bad. You just thought, wow, VP's in super sick mode and again, and now it's going to be a really cool final, you know. Turned out, it wasn't actually that cool a final. Like, Na'Vi did have more than enough for mousesports to get past him in the semis. The maps were very favorable there. It was Overpass and Dust 2. So again, like, Mouse is very good on Dust 2, but it's not like Na'Vi aren't a joke on that map. So I don't think they're ever going to win that series. But in the final, what really makes the final staggering is if you add the final and the winners match together and you realize VP won 5 out of 6 maps they played against Na'Vi at this tournament. Like, that's just unreal. I mean, you looked at the map pool. Okay, here was what the maps were. Just the first 4 was going to be Overpass, Cache, Cobblestone, Mirage. Now, okay, Cache isn't an Na'Vi map. They've been banning it all tournaments. Let's take that out of the equation. The other 3 maps you've got there is Overpass, Cobblestone, Mirage. That should be literally the ticket written first-class entry for Na'Vi to win the tournament 3-1 there. That's it. Overpass, great map for them. Cobblestone, they're considered very strong on. They did, in fact, beat VP on it. And Mirage, one of their classic home maps. Instead, they got beat down on Overpass again. They actually managed to lose Cache, which is like, okay, we knew that was kind of going to happen, but the problem there is because you lost Overpass, you're now down 0-2, and you're going to have to win 3 maps in a row, which, I mean, mentally, I don't know who's going to be able to do that. They won Cobblestone big, so you're like, okay, maybe the life series has got life in it. But then on Mirage, another map they should actually be more favored on it over VP because of all VP's recent troubles. They managed to lose it in overtime. So it's true, a lot of this is going to bleed into when we talk about Virtus.Pro and how wonderful they were, but Na'Vi did look unconvincing, crucially on key maps. That's the thing. It wasn't just only players and who they were battling. It's like the maps that were worrying to me, because that was, again, they were getting into that territory where it's like they've now got 5 and 6 maps out of the pool where they're favourite over many, many teams. And that's why you lock them in at like a top 3 spot in the world. And I thought they even had the chance to maybe climb higher, you know, because they're attending so many events. But this is a bit of a lull down because, again, you lost 5 out of 6 times to VP. That's not supposed to happen for the new Na'Vi, you know. That's like the old Na'Vi.
So one of the things that came up, I started this, what are they called? Ask FMs. You know, because obviously I'm fucking Reddit banned. I'll never be able to do an AMA with the cool kids. I basically set up an Ask FM. So, you know, every day can be an AMA for Richard Lewis. You know, and one of the things that came up was Simple, who was in that dog shit lineup. Like, it's unbelievable. It literally is like Pele playing with, like, I don't know, some fucking, like, the scrub team from the fucking Dog and Duck. It's unbelievable. Anyway, the question was, you know, could Simple ever fit into Na'Vi, and could they ever make that sort of super team in the sense that you have, you know, Simple, Guardian, you know, and then obviously I'm guessing Zeus gets to stay. You know, who would Simple replace? It probably be Edward and C. So I wanted your thoughts about this, because I honestly think, right, like, as soon as Simple's ban gets lifted, you know, there must be a temptation. I know Simple has a reputation as being fucking crazy. I know he's got a reputation as being a difficult to work with, difficult to play with. But I've seen Zeus. Right, I've seen how he handles his business. Like, no one's gonna out-dominate him. No one's gonna out-alpha him in Na'Vi. So I think actually it could be good for Simple. It'd be like sending him to boot camp. Like, you know, when you see them TV shows, Scared Straight. Yeah, and like they take some little weedy kid and they have to go into like the prison or the military, and a drill sergeant's beasting them. You know, it could be like for Simple. So my question to you would be, is there any way that could ever work? And if so, would it be something you would advocate?
The problem is, I would have said no to it up until this tournament, because like, it wasn't just like Na'Vi did just upset Envious and win Star Series. and then they won ESWC, which admittedly was a less dominant field, etc. It's like when you look at their recent form, they've never in CSGO had a run of form like this. They'd had something like 4 events, I think, where they'd made like finals or something, and then they had like 6 top 4s in a row. So now they've gotten to the point where they're legitimately top world-class team. And just consistently, every event, it's going to be a minimum of top 4, very likely a final, and then there's going to be titles coming every 2 or 3 events. So at that kind of level, I wouldn't fuck with anything. You don't want to mess with the chemistry. You've already gotten something special there, and stylistically, it's working great. Everyone's playing great. Guardian's on peak form. Flamey's suddenly having this huge impact on all the big matches. So at that point in time, you're like, no, let's not do anything about it. Now, this event alone doesn't change that, but this is like, much like I said with Cloud9, maybe this is the start of like a slide back a little bit, or maybe this is like a bit of leveling out where you can't just have exceptional form all those tournaments in a row. I'm not sure. But if that's the case, then yeah, it would be an option for me. Because one of the problems with Na'Vi in that sense was, like, as good as Flamey was for those tournaments, I think part of the reason why they had problems at some of the other tournaments was when he didn't have much of an impact. So I think he was ever super stable. Now has been the most, like, the longest stretch of his career. He's been really good. So if you were gonna bring Simple in, I mean, personally, I would actually be looking at someone like Edward or Flamey, actually, because Flamey, I still think has his issues, and when he has his issues, that's when the team tends to lose. So that's one player there. I do actually agree that I think put it this way, maybe no one can handle Simple. Maybe it's impossible to get through to him. But if anyone could in the entire CIS region, it surely must be Zeus. And also, I did find something interesting out, which was at this tournament, the majority of the time, Starix would just be talking to Flamey. And someone told me that what happens is, basically, Zeus is the in-game leader. He leads everything in-game for Na'Vi, but that Starix is almost like a personal in-game coach for Flamey because he's so inexperienced, to sort of give him like pointers like, hey, maybe do this instead, or you should be doing this with the team instead, kind of to keep him on a rail individually, Now, if that's true, first of all, that's a brilliant idea. I can see how suddenly Na'Vi has transformed from a lineup that, like I said, I thought was up and down to being super good. Maybe that's part of it. But secondly, maybe something like that can even be done with Simple. Maybe you can even have a separate guy that deals with him and kind of like integrates whatever the fuck he's doing, because he's going to have more freedom, into what Zeus is doing as a whole. Maybe that could work. Now, at the end of the day, it is just one tournament. And then a bad tournament for Na'Vi at the moment is finish second place, and still get a map off the champions. So it's not the end of the world. I don't think anything else is going to happen now. But it is something where, as the months go on, it's more like if there's more bad results and Simple keeps his form and we then find out he's going to be banned, if all 3 of those factors come together, eventually there should be a point where it's at least questioned or legitimately considered by Na'Vi, I think.
Well, that sounds like a lot of resources to dump onto one player, actually. Having your coach basically being dedicated, solely to him, kind of feels not necessarily a waste, because obviously it's working for them. But if that is true, or even close to true, then that does feel a little bit off. I mean, again, if you're gonna take a troubled young player from that region and take an experienced star and have them basically act not only as like an out-of-game mentor to them, but an in-game coach to them as well, why not do it to Simple, who clearly has more talent than Flamey?
Yeah.
And no one's ever invested in Simple like that. I mean, the flip side management got a little bit upset, I think, with one of the videos I put out, where I was just talking about, how you shouldn't give up on Simple, actually, that the flip side were right to cut him from the team, but because he was super disrespectful to his teammates. I mean, there's no getting away from that. Like, it just makes the dynamic too difficult for him to go back. But like, I was thinking, maybe for 6 months, a top team could pick him up, call him a streamer. Yeah, North America, I'm talking about you, right? Call him a streamer, whatever you need to do, and just basically invest in him, coaching him. Coach him, get maybe play some of the scrim games, maybe, you groom him basically, right? But it would just be shocking if he comes back in 6 months and his talent is all fucking bust out, It would be the worst thing that's ever happened in CSGO, I think. And obviously, yeah, sure, a big part of the blame would have to lie with himself. But that doesn't make it any less tragic, Like, you don't say, oh, well, Kurt Cobain shot himself, so fuck Nirvana. Ultimately, it's just one of them things that happen. He's got no one to blame but himself. Ultimately, you still go
wouldn't it be good to have a couple more albums at least, before the shotgun was deemed a necessary out? I was just triggering a load of Nirvana fans there, so we should probably move on. But anyway, you get my point.
Okay.
Let's talk about the victors, and then we'll move on. Virtus.Pro, right? Now, I've told you privately, and probably it's on air, because it's one and the same ultimately these days. I've said that I can't ever back Virtus.Pro again. I can't do it. I can't do it. They always let me down. I said I was never going to not bet on them after they did that Gfinity at the Copper Box, when they did that ridiculous comeback on Nuke. Absolutely sick. But since then, it just feels like they used all of their mojo for that one moment. And I was out in Valencia, as I said, and I was talking to Taz after the 16-0. I was like joking with him, yeah, close game, mate, against Kinguin. And he was saying, that it was a real watershed moment for them. That, nothing woke them up more than that result. He said, as far as he's concerned, it was an absolute disgrace. A disgrace. He took it super hard. He was drinking, Neo was there, and Neo was saying, that we can work this all out. And I was saying, well, at what point are you going to think about a roster change now? Is a roster change answer? And they were like, no, we're adults, we're professionals. We realize how bad this was. This is like rock bottom for us. We're going to talk it out and we'll be better. Now, how many times have you heard a thing say that, right? So I just was like, whatever, mate. Yeah. Have fun being shit for the next 3 months or whatever. And then they went out to CEVO, and it was like fucking day and night. I can't even believe that is the team that got 16-0'd by Kinguin, supposedly on one of their maps. So, I mean, they were just amazing, outstanding performances across the board. Snacks had some, he wasn't particularly great in the finals, but prior to that, he had some amazing moments. He was getting back to his best. So what did they do, Duncan? It can't just be a matter of talking it out, surely.
Well, no, here's the thing is that I actually thought similar to you. If you could ever, I mean, a lot of these aren't on YouTube, they're probably only on Twitch, but if you could ever get all the analysis segments for all the big tournaments we've done, it's very rare I ever bet on Virtus.Pro once it gets to a semi-final. At that sort of stage, unless it's a team who's below them, I don't tend to pick them because they have a tendency to just look good for a while and then just break your heart in the big game, But actually, this is a team where, after how they beat Na'Vi, I was actually with them the whole way. I had them to beat Cloud9, then I had them to beat Na'Vi in the final. And the thing is, they really did just recapture some of the essence of Virtus.Pro art stuff, but in a different way. Here's the key thing that changed in this tournament. And this is so unlikely that this would work that I can't even believe it did, which is that they said before the tournament that Pasha would no longer be AWPing and that Neo was the new primary AWPer for the team who would be buying it nearly all the time. Now, they did that, and he was the best player in the whole tournament. He was the MVP. I'm not even joking. He went up against Guardian again and again and just won. He wasn't only peaking Guardian, obviously, but he had no problems there. He went up against Skadoodle and wasn't having issues there. It was absolutely unreal. This is a guy where, yeah, he was here's the thing. In 1.6, he was an All of M type character who was a godlike rifler, but who could also AWP pretty well if he wanted to, But even then, he wasn't a primary AWPer in 1.6, and you wouldn't have put him in that spot, And then if you had, you wouldn't have put him against the Markelovs, the Delpans of the world. That would have been suicide. But amazingly, he's changed his role completely. They've taken Pasha onto rifles, which admittedly, Pasha was always a good rifler. But they've done this massive change in terms of the style of the team. And it's not only worked, but it's brought out the best performance we've ever seen from Neo in CSGO. So I don't know where they came up with this crazy gambit, but at this one tournament, at least, it massively paid off.
Well, okay, I might be able to shed some light on this then. Because I told you, for the remaining 6 months of this calendar year, as far as I'm concerned, the fucking esports gloves are off. That's just tell the truth for 6 months and see what happens. So what people probably aren't aware of, all of the problems and the tension in Virtus.Pro basically emanate from a very basic point, and that is that Neo and Taz are fucking legends. I mean, they are legends. If you love Counterstrike, you know what they're all about as players. You know their history. and therefore, it doesn't need to be explained. But they're in a team with the most popular CSGO player probably in the world, definitely outside of NA, in the form of Pasha. Now, Pasha's the fiscal rewards for that popularity are unbelievable. We've all seen the 25k donations. We've seen, how popular his stream is. And I'm not saying that Neo and Taz are jealous of that, but they're cognizant of it. They're aware of it. They're aware of the disparity now that the player that they built up, the player they took from nothing, ultimately, the player that was unilaterally hated in 1.6 for breaking up the Golden Five and never being able to live up to those expectations. And now he's the guy that everybody loves, everyone adores, everyone talks about, everyone watches their team, see him play. He makes the most money from streaming. And they've said our jobs are made so much harder in this team because we don't think Pasha is an intelligent player. We have to tell Pasha ultimately every little facet of his game. We're the people who have coached Pasha to get him to the level he's at now. Taz is like, I get shit on after a tournament where I'm bottom fragging every game, but he goes like, I'll assign my job to basically be follow Pasha, and you can watch this on demos. He's not lying. He goes, I basically sort of hang around where Pasha's going to be, and if he fucks up and does something stupid, I've got to clean up that mess. So there's a lot of resentment there. Even if you're the most adult and calm and level-headed person, there is resentment in that team. That's where that stems from. And it really showed a dream at Valencia, that image of Taz on one end, Pasha on the other, and both of them having an issue with each other in game and sort of trying to go through Kuban, their coach, not wanting to talk to each other, not even wanting to look at each other. Now, this, for me, is probably a masterstroke because at Valencia, Pasha was doing what they call Pasha things. He was trying to play instinctively, trying to push, trying to go aggressive, AWPing, trying to be that guy, the playmaker. And when it wasn't happening, he was getting really irritated with his teammates, saying that they weren't sticking to the plan. But the problem with Virtus.Pro is the plan is always, we don't know which Pasha's going to turn up. We don't know if it's going to be disciplined Pasha, the one we've tried to fucking drill for years, or it's going to be crazy, erratic. Watch this, my friend, that Pasha, right? So I think what they've done is they've literally took the AWPing duties from him and given it to Neo because they know Neo can be trusted, molded. He's the veteran, he's the guru, and now they're giving Pasha a role where if Pasha does just Pasha things, it doesn't matter quite so much. It's not going to have as big an impact on the team dynamic. I mean, that's literally how it feels to me. And this has been bubbling under the surface for a long, long time.
Well, the thing is, part of why it worked is because I made this point when we were on the broadcast when I first heard this news, which was that there is a logic to it that makes sense, which is if you think of a lot of the best AWPers right now, so you think of like Skadoodle, I mean, not Guardian to a degree. He's always had pretty good rifles. But you think of some of the other ones that are like mainly primary AWPers, and a lot of them are famous for not having good rifles or in some cases non-existent rifles. And so with those guys, one of the problems they sometimes have is during a game where they can't afford an AWP and their team just is economically too down and they have to use it. Part of the problem is because they know they're not good with it and they never use the rifle, they play the same spot the same way as they would with an AWP. And as a result, they're even using sort of ranges incorrectly and they're not understanding even how to get an easy kill because they're trying to play it as if it was an AWP. Now, what's funny is Pasha's AWPing style was actually always closer to an aggressive rifler anyway. He used to go like really close to medium range, aggressive repeaks over and over. So actually, if you take him, he's always had good rifles as well, and just take the AWP out of his hand, it's actually just going to okay, it's true you're going to take away some of the positives because he could be crazy with it sometimes, but you're actually going to take away a lot of the negatives as well. As in, he's not going to be buying a super expensive gun, pushing up, super peeking someone over and over, dying and losing the gun, giving up the spot, making it a 5v4. All these negatives. With the rifle, he's going to be able to get a lot more done there, and it already fits his playing style. So I don't know if this is a permanent change. If I were them, I'd maybe like ease into like a middle ground. Like every now and then, if it's the right map, he can secondary AWP or something, but. It's amazing that both ends worked. Like, yeah, the Pasha end was, I could have bet more that would work, but the fact that the Neo end worked so well, like, part of me doesn't even believe that can happen again at another event, because if it does, he's just going to be back as like one of the top 10 players in the whole world. So it'd be great if that could happen, but I don't know, man. That was just so above and beyond what you could even expect.
Well, I mean, this is what Neo does. It's all like his entire career is just one fairy tale story after another. I mean, it is fucking ridiculous. Like, you could make Disney movies about just like one tiny part of his career in 1.6, let alone if we were to take his entire Counterstrike career right the way through. One of the reasons why I've always loved those guys was, again, their fucking mental resilience, because they got fucked over by shady organizations like no one ever did. Like literally, they had the worst of it. And yet it always seemed to bring out the best in them, whereas most teams would be like, I don't know if we can play. Team will pay salary. Oh, bad. Just making excuses. Like, when they got fucked over for the umpteenth time, just before they went to WCG, that was when they had the Vitriolic organization, a South African organization, if I remember rightly, that had basically, fucked them over. They changed their name to Again, and that was because it had happened again. And they went to WCG and got the gold fucking medal. That's what these guys do. So I really hope they can continue to work through their problems, because they are a great team and they've got great players. And like you say, the performance from Neo this event, and I got to say, actually, it's not like it didn't benefit Pasha as well. I thought Pasha actually had a lot more impact this event, well, certainly than he did in Valencia. Put it that way. He seemed to have, just a better all-round contribution, better performances. I don't know if it was because the weight was lifted or whatever, but he was really good in the series against Navi, I thought.
But yeah, I mean, listen, it is just one event again. Fantastic. Obviously, it's another classic VP. Like, it's up there with those other great runs they had. But if they can play this way, if Neo is going to be at all as effective as an AWPer, like, they're legitimately going to be a contender for the major, which looked like it wasn't going to be the case when you looked at the last 3 to 4 months. It looked like they were more like, if they did well, they could make a semi. The team that played at CEVO could win the major. It was that good, and across so many different maps and in all different areas that you'd want them to be good.
Well, I hope it works out. And interestingly, I don't know, did you see Pasha's Facebook?
No, what did he say?
Today? Well, no, there's been. It's just so ridiculous. Okay, so he has a deal with G2A where people who get their buy through G2A, they put a code in. He's got one of those deals, and his code was no homo. Right?
Yeah. Okay.
And he's been asked to change it. And the Facebook
I want you to make jokes as to what he changed it to, but okay, what did he change it to, Rich?
No, the Facebook post was basically very sad message today. Need to change my code, no homo. I ask why? The new one is biceps.
Okay, I'm glad, mate, because you were setting it up there as though, like, well, you say that they're going to win the major, but Pasha just changed his code to less homosexuality in the world, please. It is wrong. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, is it over? Is it over, Rich? Is he out of esports
now? No, certain people will always get a pass, but what made me chuckle was just the idea that he couldn't see how, like, no homo could be misconstrued on the internet. I thought that was quite funny. But
it's weird, isn't it? It's almost like different cultures are different and have different sensibilities about things. I once tried to give a little dissertation about that, Rich. It wasn't my best moment, but much like Pasha, I'll pull back on that one.
Yeah, I think you should. Mate. But anyway, so worthy winners of CEVO. With that event out of the way, and the fact that I'm probably fucking doing the robot more than Peter Crouch because I'm on shit hotel internet, we'll go to the news. We'll do a news roundup and then we'll blow this stink hole and return next week with a much improved setup. And it's a shame, Doug, I had a bunch of stuff I wanted to go over. I saved all of the hate threads for HLTV.
Oh, okay.
And I wanted to read them to you, but I'll save that gem for next week.
It's okay. I can only handle so much after having to meet all the Cloud9 members, mate. So just ration it out for me, okay? Give me a week off.
Maybe, mate. So let's talk about the ESL One qualifiers for Cologne. Obviously, the major's coming up. Incidentally, just while we're here, again, full fucking disclosure, total truth from Richard Lewis. There was talks about the major. I was asked if I wanted to do it by ESL. I think that's really nice of them. I did say that I want the dream team. It should be me, Thorin, Scoots, if he can possibly be worked in there and he wants to do it. And it didn't really, I don't think they were too keen on having us all there. We've been really critical of ESL lately. I don't know why I get the pass and other people don't. Maybe I'm a bit more political. I don't know. But in the end, I did say to them, I won't rule it out in future if we can all do it. Because, I do see me and Duncan as a package deal now at the very least. But yeah, well, I did turn them down. I hope they find somebody good to do it because it was. I'll be honest with you, Dunk. I fucking respect loyalty. It's the only trait really that matters in esports because there's so little of it. It's the most valuable commodity. But on the one hand, it was real. I want a major for the sake of CSGO to be as good as it can be, and I'm not saying I'm necessarily the best host or whatever, but I know my way around doing it, and I think I bring something to the table. So it would have been nice to have been involved for that reason. But I think ultimately, we need to keep the band together, don't we? And the no men and just fucking remain on the peripheries. But I mean, you again, just while we're talking about it, you haven't ruled out doing an ESL major, have you? I mean, we've gone in on ESL for multiple reasons, and we joke about how we're on some blacklist. There's a lot of misinformation flying around. For starters, Duncan isn't banned. You're not banned, right? That's never happened. No one was banned, officially or unofficially. And I imagine they take it on an event-to-event basis. So we will not be doing Cologne, will we?
No. I mean, the thing is, obviously, it's not something I'm not particularly thinking about it. I'm not putting down I hope I can do this one here. A good factor to go in favour of it would be what you're mentioning here. Listen, if it's the team of people I know already and I like to work with, and then you add in the fact that if it is the three of us who already do events anyway, if we do all the Gfinities, then great, because I know then we're going to be able to give a quality product for people in terms of new people who are watching or people who only watch the majors. Hopefully we can make it better for them. So I think that would be a very compelling reason to do it. With that said, if there's problems, if there's issues like this, or if it has to just be one or the other, then I don't. It's not the end of the world for me if I have to miss it. Plus, let's face it, I'm probably never doing the ones in Poland. So we're talking about the ones in Germany here, guys. They're the ones that we're really discussing,
Yeah, Pasha should have changed his code to no Thorin. He would have made a fucking killing.
He would have fucking... think how much he would have made, yeah. It would have almost been encouraging people who don't like me just to buy stuff from G2A, which by the way, G2A would be a brilliant marketing strategy. I'd go for it if I were you. Get Cloud9 sponsors, have some sort of fuck Thorin, have something like that as their secret code. I bet the numbers go through the roof, mate.
I'm telling you, literally, he would have made a killing. He would have just inspired someone to kill you as soon at an event. That's what I was talking about. I didn't even mean anything bad. But no, look, and here's the other thing I'll just say now as well. I'm still super psyched about the major happening. I want to say, obviously I've got a lot of friends over at ESL. The one sad thing that happens sort of every event is when people go in on ESL using fucking ESL talent. I don't get the logic there. What do you fucking expect to happen? That's like saying, oh, the BBC's using Jonathan Ross, whatever, like, all right, probably it's ITV now. I don't really keep up with where that fucking shill is this week, but you know what I mean. It's like you're going to use your own talent. That's just how it works. And Machine, who was really thrown in the deep end last fucking major, he's a great fucking guy. He's a good kid. Really works hard at what he's doing. Sure, he did headbutt a laptop, right? On air, the ESL ESL Pro League Finals. That's not cool. He needs to not do that again. Like, I think he's really coming along nicely, and everyone gives him a lot of shit. And people give the ESL guys a lot of shit in general. It's not like, it's just ideological differences in a way, not even in a major way. That's just all it is. That's the only thing that's sort of keeping us apart. It's not like we're at fucking war with each other or anything. And I don't want people giving those guys a hard time. There you go. I think I've been pragmatic there, Duncan.
Yeah, no.
You can learn a lot from me. You can learn a lot from me, mate. I've said that. Anyway, let's talk about the qualifiers. So, we've already talked about Kinguin before. Now, Kinguin wrecked Dignitas 16-8 on Dust 2, a map that's always been very good for Dignitas. Obviously, we've talked about how it's sort of Kinguin's background as well, and I don't want to get into the whole, it's best of ones, blah, blah, blah. Like, I agree, obviously, best of ones aren't ideal. I think eventually the sport will evolve where best of ones to decide anything are going to happen, but whatever. But, I wanted to say that Kinguin are really starting to win me over, dude. Like just not just in terms of the team, but how they're handling their business as well. Last week, what did we talk about? Delito and the Batman scandal. Yeah, fuck Delito. They just see you, right? They made such a big deal about this guy being like the brains behind the team, and that he was going to call all their strats, and we were going to have 5 players, and we were like, ooh, this is really intriguing. Is this going to work? And then at the first sort of sign of anything that might undermine competitive integrity or whatever, Kinguin just were like, yeah, get him out. We're not interested in that. We don't want to be associated with that. And then Kinguin go to these ESL One qualifiers, and they clean up without him. So they really made a fan of me. What didn't make a fan of me were the fans of Fox. Because, again, last week we were a little bit critical of Fox. I don't know if you saw the YouTube comments on the last VOD that we put out.
I didn't, but I could already imagine they were probably like, the headshot killer, PT, oh my God, fucking retards talk shit about Fox. He is better than Kenny
it's
S.
better than that. It's
I'm sure it was like that, mate. Okay.
I mean, there was one guy who sort of gave away his agenda because his YouTube name was Nuno Ferreira, right? Like, the most fucking Portuguese name.
See, the problem is I'd have just bailed on that as soon as I saw that name.
Yeah, well, so he made about 3 comments, which were all links to like the fucking odd games where Fox was sick with a rifle or something. But there was one guy, he was like called, I don't even know, it was like PT Crazy Killer or something. And he said, it was something along the lines of, I can't bring it up now because it'll make me robot out. But he made the joke. Well, he made the point, it was like, ha, you say Fox is bad, say that while he fucks your mums, you gingers. It's
Dennis there,
that.
I think he comes from the nothing school of comebacks, so it's like he's just slaying us, you can't come back to that, mate. He's fucking our moms. Like, what are we gonna do there? We can't fuck his mom. That's just like we copied his idea, so he wins. He wins again, Rich. It's fucking moms and the fact that you're gay. If people figure out those factors, it's over. It's just you can't beat it,
So
they're adapting too much.
Here's the thing, though, right? Like, I've never met your mum, right? And I'm sure she's a lovely lady. My mum, I think if Fox isn't a bad, she'd probably be up for it, actually.
Hey, he's got a little bit of that Latin flavour about him, I'm sure he's a good talker. He probably talks to people like, yeah, my hoping is very good. Like, maybe he could win her over. Who knows? Maybe that'd be a lovely scenario.
What I'm saying is, if PT Crazy Killer or whatever his name was wants to get me in. I mean, because, I've obviously seen Fox at events and stuff, but since he's the one that is bringing the mum fucking agenda to the table, if PT Crazy Killer wants to basically act as some sort of fixer, listen, I'll say on the record, I'll talk to my mum. I haven't spoken to her in a while. We don't really talk, but I'll talk to her about the possibility of this. And I'll show her photos, in with his tattoos and everything. And I'll get some photos of my mum, and we can give them a Fox, and maybe we can make this happen.
That's the only way you'll ever be able to say that Fox is the daddy.
I'll never call him that.
We got there in the end.
Okay. Mate, it'll be like that creepy situation where it's like they're your uncle. Yeah, but why is he staying over all the time? That's your uncle. I'm giving away too much. Anyway, let's move on and talk about Kinguin's performance. They were really good against Dignitas, I believe. Fox did reasonably well in this game as well. He had a positive score. But it was Dennis who started to look like his old self. Now we're starting to see that guy come out, Scream, performing really well. Makalela's, the Orpa. Literally, they put on a masterclass, outplayed Dust 2 against Dignitas, who we know are very good on Dust 2. We remember that game that we watched against Envious at Gfinity back before Envious had their problems.
DreamHack Tours.
We know, DreamHack Tours as well, of course. Because the rematch was at Gfinity, wasn't it? But they, we know that they can play this map. They were absolutely schooled. They were wrecked. And it's not like Dignitas are a bad team, but Kinguin were just really, really good. So my question to you is, mum fucking aside, do we need to take Kinguin very, very seriously indeed?
It's definitely increasing event on event. I mean, everything's looking better. They got Dennis into the lineup gets better. They got the coach aspect that seemed to help initially. They've now survived without the coach and qualified. So I don't see any problems with them becoming a legit team. They're starting to move into sort of top 10 territory. It certainly seems like. The thing is, I mean, it's not like these qualifiers are like super stacked. Like obviously the win over VP as a series and that one map still supersedes anything they did at this qualifier. So I think they're headed in the right direction, certainly.
Can you see them doing any damage though? Now that they're at ESL One Cologne, they're obviously going to have a massive push from the fans. The fans love them. Can you see them being this sort of wildcard team? Could they go there and, despite all of the problems they've had, despite the fact they're going to need someone to replace Delito, or I don't know if they've even got anyone on the shortlist for that. Can they realistically go with a major and be an upset potential team?
Probably not, in as much as if the major is structured the same way as it was before, where you get a top 4 team as number 1 seed, top 8 teams number 2 seed, and then a team like Kinguin and another come from the qualifier, and 2 of them go into that group. So that means you get someone who finished top 4 and someone who finished top 8 in your group. So basically, they could get an easy group. They could get Keyed Stars, could be the 2nd seed, and then they've got a chance to get in the group. So, okay, potentially there's a top 8 finish for them there. But there's a lot of other groups they could get in where they'd be struggling to even get out of the group, Now, again, it is, as far as I know, it's still best of 1 in the group, so it might still be doable. They have some upset potential, but if I had to put my money on it, I'd say odds are they're just going to go out in the group stage, just thinking of how the structure will be, who they're going to get. And then best case scenario is probably a round of 8 finish. I don't think realistically in the round of 8 they're going to beat any big teams in a best of 3. It's not like them beating VP was right, well, that's the end of VP, and I guess they're the new team. No, it was a massive upset, and we've seen VP bounce back from it, so it's gonna be hard to go past the round of 8. I think that's probably a reasonable expectation as to what a good performance from them would be.
Okay, we'll talk about Dignitas in a second. Something else that's been brought to my attention. I've just had a link sent to me. Do you remember that conversation we had about Taz, Neo, and Pasha just a few moments ago?
Yeah.
Do you remember when I said how Taz and Neo aren't jealous of Pasha? Remember that?
Yeah. Okay.
I said I wouldn't describe it as jealousy. Do you remember that?
Right.
Right. What do you think has been the takeaway from that conversation?
Richard Lewis says Taz and Neo are mad jelly of Pasha.
You're not far off, actually. The HLTV thread is Taz, Neo jealous of Pasha. Richard Lewis just said it on stream. That's sad. So
I've always thought there's a really interesting thing you can do, right? Which is if you're ever having a debate with someone, right, and it's really going back and forth and it feels like you're not making any headway, like they won't even accept things you're saying, basically, just say to them, what was my original point? And if they like stumble and they're flustered and they start like saying something that's like say your original point was like, oh, I think that like a bit of socialism is good in society. If their point at the end is sort of like, oh, I think all babies should be killed if they're not born yet, like you're like, oh, okay, same. I see the problem here, mate. You can't actually interpret even what I was saying before you talk about what you want to say, So I think that's kind of what HLTV.org forums is like to me,
Yeah, it really has become sort of the Twitch chat of internet forums. It's quite sad, actually. The amount of times I see stuff I patently haven't fucking said. Like, it's just obvious I haven't said that, and it's on there. Like, I think it was like I said on the DreamHack Valencia broadcast, I think I said, like, oh, Guardian is a legend of Counterstrike. He was a legend in CSS. He was great in 1.6. Like, he could play the game. He was very technically good. All of the top players respected him. I mean, there's a reason why he's playing with guys like Zeus and Edward now, It's not a fucking coincidence. And I said, and of course, he's the best AWPer in the world now in CSGO, despite hating the AWP. Again, what do you think is the takeaway from that? Well, the takeaway was, Richard doesn't even know who Guardian is. He said he was legend in 1.6, but he plays Source. And it's like, yeah, I was there. I was the only journalist going to Source events. You dumb motherfucker. Like, I was the only guy who knew who Guardian was. I was the only guy who talked him up. All right, I don't know who he is. Yeah, honestly, it's fucking unreal. Like,
it's okay. Here's the solution to this. Yeah, so guys, like the other day, every HLTV.org user who doesn't have a Portuguese flag was just like, we were all in this group chat that we're all in. It's a big conspiracy to keep Fox down. And they were all telling me how Fox is well shit and how he'll just never, he's not even as good as like Chris J's brother. And I don't even know if he has a brother. So I think I just took care of it all there. I just started the civil war on HLTV. We're going to use the Portuguese fans. Yeah, we're going to use the Portuguese fans on our side this time. Now burn them all. Good.
Yeah, let's sit back and watch that happen. Can we get the Indians involved as well?
I can't believe you said that guy's name was like Nuno Ferreira.
Nuno Ferreira, it was.
As soon as you see a name like that, it's like you don't even have to see the comment, do you? You just know what's coming.
Yeah, well, Fox is the best player of all time. That is the comment. Always from Nuno Ferreira. Anyway, just some breaking news there. Breaking news. A guy on HLTV says shit things that aren't true. So, following on with the Cologne qualifiers. Now, at this point, right, flip side obviously qualified. Well, they beat Dignitas after Dignitas were 12-3 up. 12-3 up. Dignitas just through the game. It was on Mirage. Again, another map we know Dignitas can play. Went to overtime, and they just got wrecked on overtime by flip side. A flip side without Simple. So, I don't know. Did you watch this game? I don't know if you were able to watch it.
I haven't seen those games yet. But I saw some. I looked at the scores, and I mean, first of all, you do have to say Dignitas has a little bit of choke in them. We've seen it before. Usually not against lesser teams, obviously. But also, just look at the whole qualifier. If they'd stomped the rest of the qualifier, then lost the last games, it'd be one thing. But it looks like they were all the games they were winning were close games anyway. So they don't look like they were in form at this tournament.
Yeah, I mean,
because it should have been a lock to take this top spot.
Oh fuck yeah! I did watch this game, and I was like, holy fucking shit! Like at 12-3, I just sort of tuned the fuck out, like, because it's just. That's it. Dignitas has done it. I thought Dignitas were going to do it. I think a flip side without Simple is a massive fucking downgrade. And then it was like, hang on. And yeah, it literally was a choke. Like it was the classic choke in the sense that you could tell the players were getting worried about what's going to happen if we lose. You could just tell by the way they were playing. They were making mistakes. Communications were terrible. It's not like it was a classic performance from Flipside. Literally, this was Dignitas falling apart. And I think that there might be a roster change incoming for them, honestly. I don't know where it would be. I don't know in what way, but they said at the Gfinity event. We had drinks afterwards and we were talking about it. And they were like, look, man, we know we're a better team than what our performances dictate. In Pimp, they've got a phenomenal player. In AZ and Kievi, they've got two amazing young players. We keep talking about Nico. Nico keeps saying, right, this is it now. I'm going to knuckle down and work hard, play well, go sick. And it just hasn't happened yet. And I don't know, man. I think MSL, the in-game leader for Dignitas, is starting to think, yeah, we need to fucking tweak something here. I don't know what it would be, but we did see in sort of another news story that was going to cover, but it's a good time to bring it up now. Tensky left SK Gaming and got replaced by Cadian of all things. So I don't know what you thought of that transfer there, but that's out to me as very odd.
Well, the thing is, COS SK, I mean, they haven't done a lot, but they have been on the rise over the last month and a half. Obviously, that team there is essentially like the audition to see if there's a good player that can join Dignitas. Because at the moment, there's no point in Dignitas previously replacing a player because they were still doing all right with Nico doing badly. And there was still like, you know, let's give him a bit of rope and let's see if he can get it back together. And if he doesn't, okay, then we kind of know it's not going to happen. And then we can feel confident moving forwards. We haven't thrown away someone who was one of the best players. So to me, the timing of all this makes sense. The fact that obviously they're not qualified for the major, I mean, that's really the killer there, because if they'd have at least made the major, then everyone gets a chance at the major to see how well they can do, and you can kind of set the bar for where you're going to be. Not even getting to go there, and for the second time in a row now, I mean, if I were them, you probably have to do a move now. I mean, why wouldn't you? These aren't even good competition you're losing to.
Yeah. So, you know, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with Dignitas, man. Massive blown up qualifying for the major. They're better than that. They should have been there. You know, Kinguin, with all the recent problems, there's an argument there to say Dignitas should beat them. They're a better drilled team. They've been together longer, you know, as a lineup. But okay, maybe Kinguin have better individual players. Losing to Flipside, who have lost their star after being 12-3 up, that's a fucking disaster. That's a disaster. I mean, that's unbelievable what's happened there. So, I don't know. Also, the SK changed. Tensky was saying he was depressed. He couldn't even be bothered playing there. Apparently, it's a really tough environment to play in. Players are calling each other out. Dare I say it, Duncan, that word toxicity was getting bandied around about it's a toxic environment, you know, which makes me less sympathetic to it all. But apparently, it's a very...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, or massively. It's like, you know, if you were like the HR representative and, you know, you were like really, like you were liberal as fuck and you were sympathetic and you were like, so you want to talk to me about your boss? What's going on in work? It's just he's bullying me. Okay, don't cry. Here's a tissue. Tell me what's been happening. I don't know how to describe it. It's just he's so toxic. Like, get the fuck out of my office. You're the problem. You little fucking rat, get out right now. Like, that's how you would react. The word toxic is like, again, you know, I've got my trigger words: unprofessional, toxic. Yeah. Toxic is the top trigger word. If you ever say that, fuck off. But anyway, yeah, apparently toxic. It's a toxic environment. So I don't know. They were trying to sell it like, oh, he's not depressed because he's playing in SK Gaming. He's just depressed and he needs a break. But like Tensky, I don't know. I mean, like, he was a real good player in SK. I don't know where the fuck he would fit into Dignitas exactly, because we keep talking about how the guy who's underperforming is Nico. He's the guy who's got to, you know, raise his game. But who knows? Who knows? Anyway, quick thoughts about Cadian, by the way. I don't understand how he keeps getting these opportunities with top teams.
I mean, Cadian's biggest problem for anyone who does. Here's the problem: the public perception of Cadian is when he did the major. Or if you remember, he was just replacing this guy who didn't quite make it all the way there, you know. But anyway, when he was doing that first major, he's been on desks, etc. And so he's done some analysis. He did some analysis of Face It. And he's done observing. So people know him in the community for some of the positive things he's done and being able to contribute and be some aspect there. Unfortunately, in terms of personal rep, I don't know if it's just because he's a young guy, but over the last few years in the Danish scene, he's been really disliked by most of the top players. I mean, there was a joke that they used to literally have a Facebook page that was sort of like the No Cadians Club, and everyone was in it and was like, yeah, fuck Cadian. Like, so you can tell you're going to have to be a fucking phenomenal player to overcome something like that, you know. Basically, that has happened before, but usually you have to end up being like a get-right JW type talent to overcome people's natural resistance to the fact that they think you're an idiot. So I don't think he's done that. He's probably never going to be able to do that, but I don't know. Listen, there is an aspect in CS that has always been the case that it is a bit incestuous. Like if you just have a name and you've done some things, people are always going to sort of be willing to give you a chance over someone who might have a lot of talent but hasn't really had lands yet and hasn't really proven it yet. So I don't know. Maybe they're just trying it as a change. You know, I don't think he's a bad player, but I wouldn't really. I'd call that like kind of a wash. Like, is it an upgrade, downgrade? It's probably just nothing. You know, I don't think the team's going to become much better. So.
I definitely think it's going to become worse. There's a lot of talk as well that they might be running some dual AWP setup with Cadian as a secondary AWP. You know, it just please stop this. Please stop this. I had such high hopes for that team. You know, like Danish people, this has been well documented on air, and I thought SK Gaming had real potential. I'm a big fan of Vasilian. You know, but yeah, this is just catastrophic. In my opinion, I don't know how much longer the team will last, because I just can't see them doing anything. If you take one of the better fraggers out of it, I mean, they were struggling to go toe to toe with top teams anyway, and they had very inconsistent results online. So yeah, it's not a fan of that move at all. Let's wrap up the ESL qualifiers. Obviously, the big talking point, mate. Right, and this must have been fucking heartbreak for you. You're a Titan fan. I'll put that out there now. Oh, by the way, while we're here, the other thing, right? Can I just say, I did make a joke. I don't even know when it was. I made a joke about you being golden over 4 or something, and it's stuck, and people think it's true now. I don't know why.
They can believe it.
It's not.
Well, maybe when I come back to the UK, we'll play on stream sometime.
Yeah, I'd like that, mate. I want to show people that you're not. It was just a joke. It was a throwaway joke done on a fucking Gfinity stream, I think. And you even said after I made the joke, idiots are gonna believe that now, you know. Salty as fuck.
That's how it goes.
I was like, yeah, of course, mate, of course. You were right. But anyway, so you are a Titan fan, and. Here we are, mate. They got wrecked by eBettle, a Polish team, and spearheading their charge.
Are you trying to phrase it that way on purpose, Rich? Like setting it up? The team that beat them is unknown, okay? Polish. Keep going. And had someone once banned for hacking. Are you ready?
Yeah, you ready? Here we go. So I'm so glad actually the camera's not on, so you can't see me rubbing my covetous hands with glee. But you're absolutely right. You've read the next part of the story like a book, and that is that the guy who carried eBettle to victory against Titan, right? Who now have shocked, now have everyone in there, right? They were carried by a guy who I think he definitely has at least one VAC ban, although some sources are saying multiple VAC bans. Was banned for ESL, again, this is inarguable. He was banned for ESL for 2 years for cheating. He came out of a rehabilitation program where you have to admit that you were cheating to get the reduced sentence. So he's admitted to cheating. And some people are saying this victory was less than kosher. So I just wanted your thoughts about this overall. First of all, I mean, Titan did get there in the end. They did qualify. They wrecked LGB 16-2 in the match after, which isn't worth talking about. But I want to ask your thoughts about this game.
I mean, to be fair, it's not. First of all, it's a LAN tournament anyway. So if he's actually cheating there, that's a bigger deal than people are making out to be, because that would mean that somebody's cheating on LAN at an ESL event, which is a pretty big statement to make. I wouldn't say that. I would just look at the results and go, okay, let's look at the 2 big games they won. They beat Hellraisers 16-14, and then they beat Titan in overtime. So it's not like they 16-4'd all these people, and people are obviously like toggling hacks on that we've never seen before and wrecking everyone. Plus, listen, I've never heard of eBettle, but when I look at the players, I have heard of these players. These players have been around in this sort of tier below Virtus.Pro in the Polish scene. Some of them are even known, like some of them go back in a 1.6, you know. So they're not total unknowns. I would just suggest it was a one-off miracle run by a reasonably unknown team, and especially one that these opponents had no idea what they were going to play, like how to play against them, and probably, as you see by the close scores, still thought they were going to win against and still get through the games against. So props to eBettle. I mean, the Hellraisers result's not as shocking because, let's face it, Hellraisers haven't been great recently on LAN. But, yeah, I mean, it is a bit surprising that the new Titan would be able to lose in this fashion. Then again, it is absolutely their first event, and no one even knew, with all the drama of those players coming back, what the new Titan's going to look like. So I wouldn't have expected them to lose here, but it's not like they got stomped.
But Titan did get through to the major. That's the main thing for you. Some thoughts about how the new Titan are looking. You know, obviously you're a fan. In a lot of ways, this is a dream come true for you, because I know you have a thing for Shocks. I know when he was making those overtures to that makeup lady, you were thinking, I could get with a woman while you watch Shocks. Anything for you. I know that was happening in your brain, right? And now he's at your favourite team. So you must be, you know, happy as a proverbial pig in shit, right? I mean, do you think this is going to work out for Titan? You know, they have made it to the major. Are they gonna get better? Are they gonna grow? Is this a team that you feel you can get behind?
The problem is, my favourite player in Titan, the recent one, was Kenny S. So that is a little bit of a problem. Now, it is a positive that he's been replaced by another player I've always respected and admired a lot, which is Shocks. So that's not too big a problem there. The big issue for this team is that, like, Shocks and Existence, I've always loved their game, loved the way they approach the game. I really like it's very interesting. They have totally different approaches. The big problem I see for Titan is that those two, I think, put in the right spot. Like, Existence runs everything else, but he gives Shocks a bit of freedom. Shocks doesn't have to play. If you do all these things, I think it can work. My biggest problem with this Titan is that I don't see how they can be as good as Envious, or maybe even as good as the lineup that they had last year when they had Kaylee. Because the big problem is, once you get outside of Shocks, you've got a lot of players who aren't that good. Like, Shocks is the only star power in the whole lineup. So if you think they had problems before, they've now essentially got like 3 support players and then Existence, who's not a very good fragger. So I don't think they're going to be super good. That's why, for me, it's all about style. Like, they have to literally get everything nailed down. They have to make Shocks a superstar, make everything work around him. Existence has to be able to have a really good tactical input. Otherwise, what's the point in him being there? And then you have to hope that the others are decent enough as sort of middling supportive players that they can do something. Because at the end of the day, when you look at this lineup, realistically, you need like Smiths to be the second star player. That's really who it's going to fall on at this point. And I don't know that that's going to happen when you talk about play the best teams in the world. So it is interesting. Like, I think there's definitely, it's not just a team that's like, they won't do anything, they shit, who cares? It's more like, you can definitely see what they have to do, and will they be able to? That's like the interesting part. You can sort of see where the future is, but it's going to be tough to get there. Every little part has to go right, I think, for them to be a top 6 team, you know.
Well, look, here's something I want to show you. I don't know if you saw this GIF. I'm going to get Sam and bring it up.
I saw a bunch of them. Which one was it?
Yeah, it's in our group chat. If you want to click on it specifically, and then you can give us your reactions to this. I think Sam's going to put it out on stream for us now, and I can gauge your reaction. How smooth is this, mate? Do you think that they're all bedded in? They're all getting along based on that? That's one of the most awkward fucking things I've ever seen.
Well, here, listen, this is the whole premise. What's funny is when Smiths and Shocks came back, I did set it up as like, this isn't just about in-game stuff, guys. This is literally 2 people who were never going to play with someone else, who now literally, because they've got nowhere else to go, have to be like, yeah. Remember when we were like great friends? I'm sure it's going to be great when we play again together. There's no problems or anything. And literally remember that you have to remember the 2 players who started the French Shuffle was Existence kicking Smiths. That started essentially Existence saying, don't want to play with this guy again, who I've played with for 3 or 4 years in a fucking row. And now, because Smiths is now being kicked himself again, starting the next French Shuffle, he's like, hey, Existence, we're friends again. And so I think there is something to that in a way. Like, I think what you're seeing there is that I could believe they all do want to make it work, and they all do want to make bygones be bygones and all that, but it's never going to instantly come back. It's like, okay, so using an analogy referencing kind of what you were talking about last week, okay? So last week with VP, you were using that talk about how, Taz and Pasha being against each other and using Cuban as the go-between is like when, you're at the dinner table and the parents are having a bit of a tiff and they're like, oh, tell your mother to pass the salt liver. Well, this is like when your mum's kicked your dad out for cheating, and then she's decided after a month or so, listen, I don't want my kid to grow up in a broken home, and he's promised, listen, things will be different this time. So he comes back, and the problem is he moves right back in, and you're loving it because you're like, yeah, dad's back, we're going to be a family again. The problem is dad really wants that to be the case as well, so he's just trying to settle right back into his life. But your mum's got him on sort of a short leash, like maybe that they're having arguments over not enough sex in the bedroom, whatever. But there's still that little bit of awkwardness where she's like, I can't trust this, and you've got to rebuild that phase of our relationship. Trust has to be earned. That's what I feel like's going on right now between Shocks and Existence. Because there was also another clip later on, another GIF where Smith's wins around and Existence sort of tries to grab him by the back of the neck like he would somebody who's a best buddy of yours and sort of shake him a bit. And Smith sort of looks at him like, you do that again, you fucking cunt. I love it. Oh yeah, yeah, we're winning. Yes, it's good. I like this. Fucking happy. You could see that in the back of his, Maybe I read too much in that. I don't know.
I think you're on point, mate. The thing is, there's no reason why it should be awkward. Just if you look at it, it's a team, 5 players. Hey, we won a game. Hey, let's all have a hug. Yeah, that's not happening, mate. That's not happening at all. Not here. So it only becomes awkward predicated on the history. And I just thought it was a wonderful physical manifestation of everything people have been talking about how difficult this return was going to be. That it literally, that moment where they're looking at each other like, yeah, fuck, we've got a hug now. We've actually got to make physical contact. It's like, can you imagine, I don't know, me and Slasher or something? Yeah, it'd be awkward as fuck, wouldn't it? There's too much water under that bridge, I think. So I'm going to watch this.
Smith's having to go back into that hug like that was sort of like where in Game of Thrones spoilers in the last season, where Sansa Stark basically just has to sort of pretend like she's totally cool with going to Castle Black or whatever the fuck that was with all Ramsay Bolton and all that. I love you.
Winterfell,
whatever it was. But anyway, it was sort of like that. Oh yeah, it's true. Castle Black's the one on the wall. Yeah, you're right. Whatever the one where I think it was Castle Moat or some shit, or the one that they were at. But you know what I mean? It's like you had to pretend like you were totally cool with this, but really you were doing it for political reasons. There is a bit of that probably. With that said, by the way, if they ever do any sick run, say they do some sick run of that, I'm sure it actually legitimately will be forgotten at that point. Especially by the way, if they ever fucking beat Envious on LAN, at that point they actually will just. Yeah. That will break down all barriers.
They'll blow each other on stage.
That'll be like
beyond.
That'll be like taking the fucking plunge of doing MDMA and LSD with your girlfriend who you're on the outs with, and just making all the barriers break down. And you just immerse into a field of love. I reckon that'll be exactly what it's like. So take what I just said there, people, off the stream. You can use Alphadraft's copyrighted material. Put it over the GIF of when they hug when they beat Envious, and that'll be like the anthropological description of what's going on.
Good for you, mate. Good for you. Just another quick point, actually. I'm glad you brought up Game of Thrones. A lot of pro players in the scene, when I've talked to them, they've compared you to Ramsay Bolton. Did you know that?
No, I don't know that.
Yeah, it's true, mate. It's true. They say it's like he's just so sadistic.
Okay.
He just won't stop. You think just when you think everything's okay and comfortable with Thorin, that's when he flays you alive. And I'm like, hey, I find him all right, mate. I've always got on with him. It's all right. Apart from that time we didn't get on, but he's good now. You just got to get to know him. I can't. I'm scared. I'm too scared. That's literally true. That has been said.
To be fair, I do want to turn fucking. Let me think. Who would I pick? I would like to get probably. So it'd have to be someone salty. So it'd have to be get right and turn him into my reek, and then make him watch as I actually fuck Smiths. Just like, you're gonna watch now, reek. There's the visual for you.
Get reek. I can't even.
Exactly. Get reek.
Fucking get reek. Oh, I'm ruined, man. Just the image of you eating a sausage, though, while smiling and fucking. Oh, I'm done. Right. Fuck this show. One more piece of news that happened. Was we talked about it a little bit earlier. Nihilum, thank God I'm never gonna have to fucking say the shit name again. They released their CSGO team, the Hiko Dream Team with Hiko and hey, everyone's on Adderall. Semphis. What could go wrong if I just say this? Yeah, so they're out. They're now going to be called Maximum Effort, and you know, a lot of people are talking about like this is going to be their last hurrah when they go into the NA qualifier for ESL One Cologne. Like, they don't qualify, the team's going to break apart. And a lot of people have been talking about Hiko and stuff like that. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on this because I know you like Hiko, but increasingly, and I always did as well. Like, again, if you were to go rewind like 9 months, you would find all these VODs. I'm talking how he's a model pro and blah, blah, he's all business and he's real cool. Now it's kind of like wearing on me a little bit, actually, this whole thing. So just some thoughts about where this team's going to end up. I mean, I think they're probably, you know, going to struggle to make it to the major, and in which case that's surely going to underline just how poor Hiko's decision-making process actually is.
Yeah, the big problem with this team is that basically it seems like this offline qualifier for NA is the entire team's future rides on it. Like, I'm pretty sure if they don't qualify here, that lineup's just done, and then people go their separate ways, and then who knows what happens. I doubt they all stick together. So if they can win it, maybe that's enough to give them some leverage where a team at least would want to sponsor for the major, and then beyond that, you know, you got a chance at least. There's a string of consequences can occur from good results that would end up with you in a team again. But obviously, yeah, at the moment, it looks like it's almost dead, especially because, I mean, when you bear in mind Cloud9 after playing that qualifier, you're basically down to one spot already. So it's going to be very hard to qualify.
You know, what do you make of all of this stuff about Hiko being like, you know, a money grabber and he's in it all for himself? And, you know,
I don't really understand what that means. Like, are people actually aware what the term gold digger means? Like, gold digger does not mean someone who wants to get money. Like, no, the idea is what you will do for money and what you would prioritize. So the notion is, for example, if you're a gold digger, that you would even go with someone you hate or you don't like or you have no interest in purely for money, and that would be the only reason you would be there, would be to extract the money, you know. Now, I don't think that's actually reasonable. Like, I'm pretty sure when Hiko plays in a team, he wants to win. He wants to play with good players. If you remember, the original reason for doing all this was to try and get the best NA team. People can dispute that all they want. That's actually factually accurate. I don't know anyone who can dispute that. Like, I've even talked to people from some of the teams that he was not wanting to join, etc., and being like, okay, you don't like that he didn't join your team, or you don't like the way he dealt with this, but you have to acknowledge, right, that his original reason for leaving was purely to try and get into a best team. And nearly everyone I found is like, okay, well, even if I didn't agree with how he did it, I can accept that's true. So I don't know why people are against that aspect. But the second aspect that I find really weird is this notion that he's really greedy for like turning down certain teams or doing deals certain ways. Because as far as I can tell, unless I'm way off on this, him doing that indirectly got like half of the NA scene's fucking salaries doubled. As in to retain them, to make them not leave and join his teams. When he was like trying to join one team and they didn't go with him and they got someone else, he actually artificially inflated everyone else's salary to a sick level. So why these players are salty, it just shows what a ridiculous world we live in, mate, where people won't even acknowledge anything you do if they don't like you, you know?
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, I think, you know, there's some things that don't quite marry up. Like, this is a guy who turned down mega money to go back to Cloud9, right?
Yeah.
So if he was a gold digger, then he just goes back to Cloud9, right? He's playing in that team right now. There's no fucking freakazoid there. It's him. But equally, there's some other stuff that, you know, the way he's done some political kind of maneuvering. You know, it's hard for me. It's hard for me. It's put him in a place where it's like he was like some big, lovable, sort of cuddly guy. You know, like, yeah, he goes. And it's kind of made him a bit cynical and a bit hard. It's kind of hard. I've always struggled with that. Like, I don't know if that's like just my personal shit. Like, you know, it's not what I would do. But it really kind of has made me think. Like, it's almost like I look at fucking Nihilum now and I just see it as one big vanity project for like Hiko. And I know that's not true. But that's almost like how it kind of fucking comes off. You know, he was the star player. He obviously went there on a massive amount of money. Like, seriously. Like, with the money he turned down from other teams. And they've changed so many of the roster to try and, you know, to try and make it work. And pretty sure, like, him and Semphis, for example, like, I'm pretty sure they were never meant to play with each other ever again. And that kind of felt like that was almost like if it was about principles and standards, that being allowed to happen. I don't know. He's a strange character to me. Like, and plus, let's not forget he works for Twitch. He's a Twitch employee. He's a partnership manager at Twitch, which again, that implies you're getting out of the game, right? Once you start transitioning into shit like that, you're getting out of being a competitor. Now, I think skills-wise, he's still good enough to be a competitor. I do kind of think, thanks to Anders mainly, he's a little bit overrated, perhaps. But I mean,
he hasn't been to a LAN in forever, you know. He did ESWC. The problem he has is because he's done so few LANs since he left Cloud9, it's impossible to rate him at the level he was at his best in Cloud9 because he hasn't had enough LANs. He hasn't had enough performances. He's had a few moments where he's looked good, but obviously, yeah, it's ridiculous to overrate him in that sense. The problem is, here's the key thing to note. Because it's not that he's shit and he got cut from Cloud9, it's not the same as like saying, oh, well, if this guy got back to the level he was a year ago, because usually when people say that, they're like just pipe dreaming about someone who definitely isn't going to because they've shown you they're not that good. Whereas the difference is Hiko probably, I don't know if he'll ever be as good relative to the rest of the world, because at one point he might have even been a top 10 player, but he can definitely be an elite level NA player again. And we've seen flashes of it, even if we haven't had enough to show us it's legit right now.
Yeah. Well, you know, look, I don't know where it's going to go, but I think that I'm pretty confident they're not going to qualify for the major. So we will have to wait and see. On that note, I think it's time to end the show. It's been increasingly getting longer each time we do it. That's probably my fault. I'm not being as well drilled. So there's a couple of things I want to plug. Obviously, the reason I don't have a camera, as I said at the start of the show, if you've just tuned in, I'm going to be doing Take TV's event. That's Dennis Tate Galen, absolute legend across multiple esports, one of Germany's biggest and best contributors to the development of esports in that country. He's obviously going to be running the Acer Predator Masters. It's going to be a great event, lots of great teams there. I'm going to be there. DDK is going to be there. Henry G is going to be there. And Raheem is going to be there. Like, I'll be honest with you, Doug, I have no fucking idea how this is going to work.
I'm glad I'm not there, mate. That sealed it right there. The event sounds good, but that last detail there, like, I think I'm better watching this one online. So.
Well, look, the thing is, we got to the venue, and they were literally in parts of the venue while we were there, like drills and everything. That's why I couldn't do the show there. And you know, like, I know Dennis's team. He's got about like a tight crew of about 30 guys. Like, they're fucking super good at what they do. I'm pretty sure it's going to be spick and span by tomorrow. Even though they are cutting it fine, they had some like last minute late deliveries and shit. But I said to Dennis, Raheem, like, dude, what's going on? And he's like, look, man, this is like how we do it in Home Story and StarCraft. We do things differently. We do things differently. So putting Raheem with DDK, I come on, Thorin, you're gonna watch that, dude. You know you're gonna tune in.
I might watch it just to watch how uncomfortable it will be for DDK, especially because DDK always tries to take it to some like abstract level about shit. And he's like, whoa, whoa, rocket launcher! Like, I can't even. That'll be just unreal, mate.
Mate. Rocket the jumper, rocket. Mate, honestly, I don't know where this is going to go. Apparently, me and Henry are going to be casting the first game tomorrow, so I promise you wouldn't get too fucked up tonight. But we'll see how that works out. But anyway, I'm honest, mate. You know me. I like broad horizons. That's the plug for the Ace Predator Masters. I hope everyone's going to watch it. Like, Dennis is a fucking legend. Known him a lot of years. One of the good people in esports, not like all these other fucking assholes that you know pretend to be nice guys and actually just they get rich off the work of other people. Dennis is there right fucking now with bags under his eyes, hasn't slept for 3 days with a fucking drill in his hand building the player bar. Right? That's Dennis. So the other people we got to thank, and I wanted to say this last week and we didn't get a chance, and it probably doesn't look as good without the camera, but we've now hit our 10th show here at Alphadraft. We made a lot of jokes in the early days about me and Thorin just doing it for the money. That was shills, like pay me, all that stuff. Which a little bit of that is true. But one of the things I wanted to say is, you may remember at the first show, which of course had Thorin on Hotel Internet. I'm paying homage to that right now, and it was a bit slipshod, and we were talking specifically about drafting and stuff. We talked to Alphadraft and we said, look, we want to do a show that maybe isn't quite so drafting fixated. And they were like, look guys, we just want a good show. They totally respected our creative direction. They totally fucking supported it. And we've been allowed to put together what I think, with each episode is a Counterstrike podcast that fucking keeps it real. It's it is for me something a bit different what's out there. So I want to give a massive shout out to them, because I've done sponsored content before and they put their little sticky fingers on everything you're trying to do and they tell you what to do, and it's horrible. It's horrible working in that environment. Alphadraft haven't been like that. So rather than give them a plug at the end of the show and talk about how you should go on over to Alphadraft and use their services, which you totally should. What I wanted to do was just say that they've given me and Duncan the creative freedom to do a show where we can talk about the shit we talk about. And not a lot of sponsors would do that. So that's the best endorsement I can give them. It's been a great working relationship thus far, and long may it continue. Duncan, I'm sure you'd love to echo those sentiments before we play the show out.
Yeah, it's great how they put this show on and keep paying me.
That's my man. Anyway, look, we've had some great moments. I apologize for the lack of camera. It will be different. We will be back, of course, next Wednesday without fail, come hell or high water. Thanks to Thorin. Thanks to Sam, the producer. Thanks, of course, to Alphadraft. Thanks to all the players for not having fragile little egos so we can talk about them. Thanks to me. Thanks to all of you for watching. We will see you next week. And until then, may all your drafts be alpha. Peace.